Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Good news from gov.uk. We have an update of the status of COVID-19, which is no longer considered to be a high-consequence infectious disease. Fantastic. So we can all return back to normal, right? Well, not quite, seeing as this update was posted on the 19th of March. That means it was 10 days ago. And yes, using the UK HCID criteria, they have determined that several features now have changed. In particular, more information is about mortality rates, which are low overall. And there's no greater clinical awareness and a specific and sensitive laboratory test, the availability of which continues to increase. So they're not saying that it's because the quarantine and because of what we've done, it's at a lower risk. No, they're saying that the disease within and of itself is of low risk, or it's no longer a high consequence infectious disease, and because the mortality rates are low overall. So it is not because we've quarantined, but it is because the disease itself. With that in mind, you might think, well, hey, then we can all relax a bit and start to get back to normal. To which the Deputy Chief Medical Officer will say to you, lol, no, you gotta wait 6 months. Probably. They're unsure. I reckon, I'm in two minds. If they wanted things to get back to normal, they could be pretty much back to normal by Easter, which will please the evangelicals, no doubt, seeing as you just keep the old people at home and allow the young people to work. But, which they're kind of doing anyway, basically by just saying if you can't work from home, then you can go to work, which is fair enough, because it's not going to be the old people who have active manual labour work, is it? No. They're going to be the ones who, if they have work, can stay at home. And if they don't have work, then they can, of course, stay at home. So, in a way, that's what they're doing. But then, of course, when it comes down to not being for more than two people outside, that kind of thing, it's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. So it could be that that's their subtle way to try and achieve old people stay home, younger people can go out, but we want to protect the old people by not allowing the young people to go out in order to get the virus to then send it to the old people. Word of hard to say, we'll get the old people to isolate away from the younger people, it wouldn't be an issue. So it suggests to me that they're not just trying to isolate the old people to protect them, but they are trying to crack down on everyone, as everyone else would think. I don't think it's 4D chess being played here, put simply. But if they want to get things back to normal, seeing as even they don't think it's high risk anymore, or high consequence, then of course they could. But speaking of the government's daily coronavirus briefing, Dr. Jenny Harris added, this is not to say we would be in a complete lockdown for 6 months, but the UK had to be responsible in its actions and reduce social distancing measures gradually. Yes, and then if it starts to pick up again, then quickly shut up shop again. So it's not peaks and troughs, but instead it's more monitored overall. Because let's not forget that this is an incredibly scary time for any libertarian. It's terrifying to think, well, hey, how can we throw away our rights and our freedoms so quickly when the government tells us that a disease which isn't high risk is now upon us? It's like this doesn't seem to be a suitable reason to tank the economy for a virus that seems to have a mortality rate of just under 3%, as opposed to the Black Death, for example, with about 40%. We've had diseases which are on a par with this more recently than the Spanish flu, like the Hong Kong flu, for example, which would be more of a problem, or swine flu, for example. But we didn't have such a big response from them. So either there's something they're not telling us in terms of how deadly and infectious it is, or they're trying to be more subversive and going along with what China wants in order to make the world bend to China's will more, as self-defeating as that endeavour might be. But the good news is, as we get to the end of this, as Boris Johnson is thanking people for staying home, we have had the number of volunteers who have signed up to help the NHS during the crisis has hit 750,000, which was 3 times the initial target, and it didn't take long to hit it. It's done so well that the recruitment drive will now be temporarily paused to enable the Royal Volunteer Service to process the applications. That's how well it's done. It's like, yeah, so we normally just leave it open the whole time, but now actually we've had to close it because we can't process your applications fast enough. Similar to background checks for guns in America. But nonetheless, that's the situation we're in. It doesn't seem to be a big problem, and we've got 750,000 NHS volunteers, or people volunteering to help out the NHS. So, all in all, pretty good. I'm sure we can get back to work sooner rather than later, but I think seeing as it's come at this time for the academic year, that's still going to be blown off. And universities are trying to cope with that, taking exams from home and remote teaching, which, in the other good news, will show that we don't actually need to go to university, seeing as all this can be taught online, and the online universities are just as good, if not better, and therefore we don't need to pay so much for these expensive universities and these establishments. But online learning and lectures is the way to go. So let's hope Peterson gets his way with his online university soon, and we can all get our degrees from there. But until next time, stay safe and have a good one.